I have you loud and clear.
Hello. Welcome. Science.
And that is to say,
physics,
medicine,
nature,
or
space,
time,
the brain, life,
the universe.
This week we're celebrating the 12 scientific days of Christmas.
From people who go swimming in frozen lakes to whether the booze can kill the bugs in your eggnog. I'm Chris Smith.
And I'm Greer Jackson, and this is the Naked Scientists Christmas Special.
The Naked Scientists podcast is powered by ukfast.co.uk.
Now, with us this week are biochemist James Bowers. So, James, what's the best gift you've ever had for Christmas?
The best present, it's a little bit obvious maybe, and a little bit kind of cliche, but I was living abroad for quite a few years, and the best Christmas present I got was somebody actually bought me a plane flight home to be home for Christmas.
Obviously wanted to see you.
Actually, it was the nicest thing, and it really made my year. So.
What a lovely present. Wish I got presents like that. Eleanor Drinkwater's a bird expert, so he's had a wonderful experience. Have you got any bad ones to tell us about?
Well, actually, at home I have a Cocker Spaniel, and I'd say probably the worst present came from her, in that she
On the kitchen floor?
No, not quite. She has a real love for finding half-rotted seabirds and presenting them to me with much love, but unfortunately I don't quite share her enthusiasm for rotten birds.
Oh dear, so you got a rotten bird for Christmas?
Yeah, it was very unfortunate.
Good job it wasn't a turkey.
No, not the turkey.
Hugh Hunt is an engineer at Cambridge University. Any Christmas disasters to impart?
Well, I seem to specialise in Christmas disasters, but putting a 4-litre wine box in the microwave oven to make mulled wine, and of course that metallised plastic bladder shrunk to nothing in a couple of seconds, and I could see the wine behind the door of the microwave. I shouldn't have opened the door as quickly as I did because.
And?
Well, it
wasn't pretty.
It wasn't pretty.
Did it taste good, though?
We should have just got straws and slurped up the wine off the kitchen floor.
We would have done in our house. Thank you, Hugh. Also, Amy Thomas is with us from Imperial College London. You're a psychologist. What about you? Any Christmas stories?
Yeah, my brother, for weeks and weeks last year, bigged up this present he was going to give me. It was going to be the best present. It was a huge box, wrapped up, everything. I was super excited. Open it up, and he's put an old shoe inside a box for me.
Why?
So it's a running joke in our family, but every year it fools me, every year.
Have you ever done that thing where you wrap up something tiny, but you put it in a huge box, and then you put a slightly smaller box inside the big box, and you think someone thinks they're going to get a massive present? Because there must be a psychology to that, Amy.
Yeah.
Presumably you think you're getting something enormous, and in fact it's not that special.
You get really disappointed. Surprisingly, every time you're super disappointed.
Also with us is physicist Alan Calvert. Have you had any Christmas catastrophes, Alan?
Well, I've got enough grandchildren that we usually spend at least one day in A&E every Christmas. But the best one so far was 2 years ago. My partner was actually bitten by a black widow spider. And
Not in Cambridge?
Yes, this is the first and only recorded black widow spider bite in Cambridge.
How?
We brought some
Where
stuff.
did you get it? Where did you buy it?
We brought it specially from the USA. We'd had some stuff in storage for a couple of years, and it just arrived with this extra passenger.
Oh my goodness. Was your partner okay?
Oh yes, eventually.
So where did it bite her?
On the thumb, as she was unpacking books.
Oh my goodness. What was it like?
Well,
I don't mean the spider, I mean the effect on the...
We never actually saw the spider. We managed to identify the bite from the shape and the way that her thumb swelled up.
Oh, my goodness. Greer, can you beat that? Probably
No,
not.
I can't. I'm actually kind of worried that this spider is running around your house still. No, actually, in the Jackson household, we have disaster after disaster every year. And our favourite story is the year when all my cousins and aunties and uncles came over from the States, and we were all arguing about who was going to cook this massive turkey. There's about 30 of us when we all get together. Anyway, my uncle Glasses, he won it out. He was going to cook it, and he slathered it all in marmalade, put it in at 1 o'clock on Christmas Eve, 1 a.m. that is. We all woke up in the night, went, oh, it smells like burnt marmalade. Went back to sleep. Anyway, we come downstairs, and this turkey is not just burnt, it's collapsed. There's nothing, there's not even bones. It's completely gone. So that year,
what temperature did you cook it at?
It was in an Aga, and none of us have an Aga, so that's probably got something to do with it as well.
Oh my goodness.
But we just had Brussels sprouts and vegetables that year. I mean, it was a great talking point in the family, to be honest. And the following year, we lost all power, so that was another great Christmas.
So you had cold Brussels sprouts?
Yeah, and no running water, actually, which was not too great either.
Now, before we launch into our 12 Days of Christmas, we have been running our fundraising Christmas appeal across December. And today, it effectively is Christmas for the Naked Scientists.
Yeah, we're celebrating, and so far our running total is £5,500, which is just over 10% of the way.
And that's all thanks to, in no particular order, our top 10 donors this week, who are
Alan Clapp,
Peter Westgate,
Eugene Pluter,
Eric Hollis,
Andrew Harmsworth,
Paul James,
Kenneth Van Clay,
Sven Ola Mikkelsen,
Tim Davies,
and Robert Hecker.
But we still need you guys to buy us some extra eggnog to meet our running costs for 2017. But that would also get us a brand new spanking website.
So please do make our Christmas great and head over to nakedscientist.com/support for details of how you can give us a little bit of money for Christmas via PayPal. Thank you.
On the first day of Christmas, my true love sent to me a partridge in a pear tree.
And I am absolutely delighted to tell you we do have a beautiful pear tree, sort of, in the studio. It's actually a bit of lavender with white flowering and some pears plopped into the bottom of the pot, but it will have to suffice for today. I thought we could start by making our own little snowflake decorations here in the studio. So in front of you guys, you should have some paper and some scissors, and we're going to cut them all up, a bit like school actually, and making paper chains. So Hugh, you're a physicist. How do snowflakes form?
Snow is made of water, and water molecule H2O has an oxygen with two hydrogens, and the angle between the hydrogen atoms is about 120 degrees, but it's only approximately 120 degrees. Isn't that right, Alan?
Yeah, it's actually about 110 degrees, which is possibly why no two snowflakes look exactly the same.
I was going to say, does that matter, the angle? Is that what causes them to be like fingerprints and be completely individual?
I think the old idea was that it was the hydrogen bond angle that determined the hexagonal shape, but because the hydrogen bond angle doesn't make a hexagon, we've got to think of some other reason why they come out in that shape.
But you can kind of think of it that this 120-degree angle, it's like the angle you get in a boomerang. So you can imagine three boomerangs, connect them together, makes this kind of hexagon shape, and that's the kind of base building block of a water crystal. And if you imagine drawing a snowflake, you might start by drawing three intersecting lines like an asterisk, and then at the end of each line, you might draw another asterisk, and then at the end of each of those little lines you can draw another asterisk, and at the end of each other line you keep on adding.
You just keep going forever and ever.
And if you ask 5 different people to draw using those instructions, you're going to get 5 different snowflakes because they're going to draw their asterisks at randomly different places. So every snowflake's going to look different.
But why do they stop growing? Is there a moment when they stop growing?
Well, the water is coming out of the atmosphere, and they'll only grow when there's water vapor in the atmosphere around the snowflake. And once the snowflake is formed and the air is just a little bit drier around, snowflakes need very particular conditions to grow in. And once those conditions don't exist anymore, they stop growing.
Yeah, I suppose it's hoping for a white Christmas this year. What do you reckon?
Well, I think the weather forecast is a bit blustery for Christmas, I think.
I haven't actually looked. I don't know. I always want a white Christmas because I always want to go out sleighing. And I remember thinking we did this every year when I was a kid, but actually that never seems to happen anymore.
So
I thought climate change was supposed to be happening. I mean, why isn't there any snow?
Well, you could do what you do in Australia at Christmas time because it doesn't snow then. So we make snow out of mashed potato.
How much mashed potato do you need to
no, I'm
do?
just kidding.
I was going to say that must be a colossal amount of potatoes. So, Amy, you're a psychologist, and I'm wondering whether you can take us through what makes a really good-looking snowflake, because I want to win this competition. So I haven't started cutting it actually, so I might start now.
Well, I think as we've heard about how they grow and crystallise, and the hydrogen bonds, they're able to form a sort of hexagonal shape. And hexagons are quite prevalent in nature, and symmetricality obviously is something we're quite in tune with as humans.
Why are we particularly fond of?
I think it's because there's some mathematical reasoning behind hexagons. When they fit together, you're maximising your area but minimising your parameter. Mm-hmm. So if you have like a beehive and you're making honeycomb, it's more energetically favourable for the bees to make hexagonal shapes by reducing their parameter but maximising their area.
Okay, so I want something as symmetrical as possible, basically.
That's what you
and
should go
that's
with.
how I'm going to be onto a winner.
Symmetrical and hexagons, I think that's where you should start off from.
It's a bit late for me now. I should have known that 5 minutes ago.
And Alan, very briefly, I've heard that all snowflakes are different, just like a fingerprint. Is this true?
Probably. I think it must have been about 100 years ago. A couple of Canadian scientists collected snowflakes and photographed them. And they published books containing thousands of snowflake photographs, no two of which are alike.
Wow, and they had to troll through every single one of them to identify the fact they're right.
But
wow.
then I remember this was an exam question in Crystallography 101, which said the average snowflake is less symmetrical than the average photograph of a snowflake. And I think there may be a lot of selection bias in what actually goes into a photograph of a snowflake.
Okay, mine's not gone very well. I've only actually barely just cut a hexagon, so I don't think oh, wow, that's pretty impressive,
some amazing results here.
Now, you can listen to the programme as we broadcast live at 6 p.m. British time on Sundays. The URL is www.nakedscientist.com/play. Now, we put the photos up on Facebook with all our snowflakes for you to vote. We'll be hearing the results of that later on in the programme.
On the fourth day of Christmas, my true love sent to me 4 calling birds, 3 French hens, 2 turtle doves, and a partridge in a pear tree.
You're on The Naked Scientists with me, Chris Smith, and also with Greer Jackson. Christmas is all about games, so to celebrate these bird-themed days of Christmas, we're going to play a game called Guess the Bird Call. Have a listen to this. So there were 4 bird calls there. Who would like to open the batting? Who reckoned they knew at least some of them? Nobody. Oh, Hugh's up for it. Go on. What do you reckon?
Well, I didn't hear kookaburra.
Okay, so it's a good start, Hugh. Yeah, very good. Given it's not an English native, that's I suppose
You didn't
reason.
say they were English natives, did you?
Well, we recorded them in the street earlier. No, I'm joking. Okay. James, what do you reckon then?
I don't know. I thought number 4 felt a little bit pigeony. So maybe
James gets a hint of pigeon in there.
Yeah.
Alan, you like eating all these birds, I'm sure. But what do you think about?
I think the most
listening to
delicious
them?
is probably the robin, which was number 1. It's a good mouthful.
Oh, okay. Not a very big mouthful though. So Eleanor, you're the bird expert. I'll play you each of them in turn again. You can tell us which one. So this was number 1. What's that?
Well, that's a blackbird.
So Alan was wrong.
Sorry.
He said robin. So that's a blackbird.
More
Yeah.
like a hamburger.
Okay, number 2. Eleanor?
So that would be a partridge.
Partridges, I didn't get that. Did anyone else get that? Partridges normally make a different noise when they're sort of running across the fields near me. Really? Was that really a partridge?
Yep.
You just go bang, yum, yum, yum.
Okay, number 3. What's that?
So that would be a chicken.
Okay, no one got that one. Okay, here's the last one. Now, James's money, he said pigeonish.
Pigeonish. Well, my money would be on dove.
Don't tell me there's a Christmas theme to this, is there?
Maybe. So that basically, I think pigeon, dove, they're quite similar, though, aren't they? I mean, you can tell them apart, though, because they do sing differently, don't they? Because, I heard a radio programme once, and it stuck with me forevermore, because this person said pigeons sing with 5 syllables and doves sing 3 syllables.
Well, I haven't heard that, but I can tell you that the RSPB says that there's no clear distinction between pigeons and doves. They're from the same family, and what's more, you know the grey flappy things that steal your sandwiches, and we call pigeons? They're actually the feral version of wild rock doves. So we call them pigeons, but actually they're really doves, so...
Because the argument this person put forward to me was that doves sing with 3 syllables, and you can think of it as a bit like they said a jaded soccer supporter, United. And then they said pigeons are 5, and they say my toes are bleeding. My toes are bleeding. And actually, it does work. I've identified many pigeons and doves off the back of that. I guarantee that meme will stick with everyone more. But why do birds do this? I mean, we know we all take it for granted birds sing, we chat to each other. What are they trying to communicate?
Well, a whole range of different things. You have some of them are defending their territories, others are telling you how attractive they are. Sometimes they're actually practicing their songs, and other times they use it for bonding. In fact, when they're bonding, birds like budgies actually copy each other, or other ones have particular kind of almost gang calls, which their group has in particular, and other groups don't, like Australian magpies.
But they must be born with a song, because otherwise you wouldn't be able to say, oh, that's a blackbird or whatever, because birds do have similar songs within their species. But you're saying, what, they learn that from other members of their species, or they're born with it and they adapt it?
Yeah, so it's a bit of nature and nurture. So some parts of the song seem to be quite intrinsic, and other parts of the song seem to be learnt, or at least need a little bit of practice before they're top notch.
Can birds recognise each other from their songs? So I can tell when one of you is speaking, I can recognise just from the sound of your voice without looking at you who it is. So can a bird do that?
Yes. In fact, there was a hilarious experiment done on peafowl in which they got a recording of one particular peafowl and played his alarm call again and again and again to his friends. And eventually they stopped reacting to his alarm call. It's almost like the boy calling wolf, yet they'd still react to alarm calls from other individuals. So yes, they can tell each other apart.
Most usefully. And this whole business of when penguins, taking a sort of Christmas card analogy, totally wrong because they're from the wrong part of the planet, of course, South Pole, but they find their young in amongst thousands of other individuals, don't they, when they come back? So how do they do that? Is that from calls, or is there a smell or other things?
Well, I'm not a penguin expert, unfortunately, as much as I'd like to be.
Dare you turn up on the Christmas edition of The Naked Scientist and not know about penguins?
But I'd guess call will probably be very important to that.
Eleanor Drinkwater, thanks very much.
On the 5th day of Christmas, my true love sent to me 5 gold rings, 4 calling birds, 3 French hens, 2 turtle doves, and a partridge in a pear tree.
Also with us this week, Alan Calvert, who's a physicist. Alan, you've been looking into some famous gold rings in science history. What have you got for us?
Right, I think possibly the best-known gold rings in physics and medicine were the ones on the hand of Mrs. Röntgen. Wilhelm Röntgen discovered X-rays in 1895 and published an X-ray photograph of his wife's hand with apparently one very thick wedding ring on it. I've tried to look up, tried to get a reasonable copy of this photograph, and I'm rather baffled. I've now come across 5 different images, each of which claims to be Anna Bertha Röntgen's hand with a wedding ring.
You must have a lot of hands.
Yeah. The one I think is most likely is actually of a right hand with what appears to be 2 quite thin rings on it. And this is... I'm still not entirely convinced. The photograph that is most often appears in textbooks is of a left hand, with a wedding ring on this thick wedding ring on the ring finger, and it appears to be signed and has some sort of provenance. The problem is that the German tradition is not to wear 2 rings, but to have 1 ring on engagement, and on marriage it's transferred from the left hand to the right hand.
Right.
So now I'm prepared to believe that the likely photographs of Anna Bertha Röntgen's hand are actually of a right hand, and I've now found one which is paired with a photograph of a slightly chubby woman with fairly small hands who seems to have a single thin ring on her right hand, and I believe that's probably the only actual photograph.
Do you not think that she was exposed to so many X-rays that she just grew 15 extra hands, and that could account for the anomaly?
No, this was definitely the first X-ray ever published.
I also like the way he experimented on his wife and didn't do it on himself.
Yeah.
Interesting. Obviously a brave physicist. Hugh?
Can you actually tell that they're right or left hands? With an X-ray, it could be flipped upside down on the photograph.
Well, all the radiology textbooks, they always do it from the top downwards.
Oh, so there's some logic.
James, I'm wondering, you're a biochemist, I'm just wondering what gives gold its special properties? Why do we like to wear it as jewellery?
So actually gold is interesting because it's not interesting at all, really, in terms of like...
Bit of an oxymoron.
Yes, because in terms of chemistry, it's actually really unreactive, so which is why, it's... we can use it for so many things, and it's actually quite easy to extract compared to other things that we might use. But also that means that it will last a very long time, so it's a very good kind of measure of wealth, for example. So if I had a gold bar and I had it for 100 years, it wouldn't really change. Whereas if I had an iron bar, for example, it would probably get rust on it and then become, which is iron oxide because the iron is reacting with the oxygen. So, and gold doesn't really do that. So, and it's just very malleable. It's very easy to use, but it's also just rare enough so that everybody can have some, but not too much.
Amy, can you tell us about the psychology of gold, though? Because there's no doubt about it. For generations, people have found gold particularly valuable and attractive. So why do people A, like gold, and B, like jewellery, full stop?
Oh, there's a few different theories about this. And I think one of the reasons why people like jewellery in general is because it can sort of signify things which might be a little bit awkward to communicate with words. So, for example, a wedding ring, perhaps. It's there, it's a symbol of marriage already. You don't have to say it, it's already there. So that's kind of already like a nice body cue that you don't have to tell people. Also, if you wear a necklace, you might want to draw attention to specific areas, but not want to say it. So for that reason...
I've never thought about it like that, but you're absolutely right.
It's
That's
kind
true.
of like this underlying subtle signal thing, which is really cool. But then there's also sort of like more anthropological reasons to jewellery, and gold is status, monarchy, a sign of wealth, and also a sign of love and belonging. If it's something that's bought for you by someone that you love, then you wear it and you feel loved and like you belong somewhere.
Wonderful. Wonder what I'm getting for Christmas. Amy, thank you very much.
On the 6th day of Christmas, my true love sent to me 6 geese a-laying 5 gold rings, 4 calling birds, 3 French hens, 2 turtle doves, and a partridge in a pear tree.
So we're back to birds again, but this time not bird calls, but bird eggs. Now, our producer, Caroline Steele, has put raw and uncooked chicken eggs into some vinegar for a few days, and the results are kind of interesting, to say the least. We've got a couple here. It's changed colour. There's no shell on it anymore. It's kind of squishy, a bit bouncy. I would say naked, Hugh.
Yeah, well, so the vinegar, it's an acid, and the egg shell is made of calcium carbonate. And I remember at school learning that acid plus carbonate gives salt, carbon dioxide and water. And as these eggs were sitting in the vinegar, there were bubbles of, well, it must have been carbon dioxide on the outside. Now, all of that carbonate, all of that shell is now gone. And it's very squidgy.
It is, isn't it? You're squidging it, and I'm rather nervous you're going to break it.
So what's left is that membrane. You know, when you have a hard-boiled egg, and you peel the hard-boiled egg, there's this membrane that's between the shell and the egg itself. That's the only thing that's left.
Holding it together. Rather delicate. What is that membrane for?
Well, it's a seal. It's an air seal, a water seal, because the shell, the calcium carbonate, is fairly porous. So without that seal, the egg inside will dry out.
I see then. And before the programme, you mentioned to me about this is relevant to climate change and the oceans.
Well, it is.
I thought, no, because eggs aren't found in the sea. So what were you getting at there?
Well, so this shell has dissolved in the acid of vinegar. And we know that the oceans are becoming more acidic because carbon dioxide levels in the atmosphere are rising. And so the acidity of the oceans is rising. And that's making it more difficult for shellfish to create the shells. So one of the real worries for ocean acidification is the threat on the marine life, particularly shellfish.
We get things like this. I'm going to pass it around so that everyone can have
Don't
a feel.
squeeze.
Don't break it. Please be careful. Your hands will smell very vinegary afterwards, I warn you. Eleanor, do we know why birds lay eggs instead of having live young like mammals?
Well, that is actually a fantastic question. So, except for lamprey and hagfish, birds are actually the only vertebrate group that don't have any live young. And people don't actually have a definitive answer as to why this is. There's lots and lots of suggestions. One of which is it might make it difficult to fly, but then again, we have lots of flightless birds. Other people have suggested it might be to do with immune function. Still others have suggested that it might be to do with lung formation or the eggshell itself. My personal favourite, however, is the idea that actually birds have quite complex caring behaviours. So you will have two parents who will tend to care for the young, and the females tend to be adapted to lay one egg at a time. So from the female's perspective, it seems like a good idea to try and get that egg out of you as quickly as possible, because then the male can also invest lots of time and energy looking after this offspring rather than the entire burden being on her.
You mentioned things that do or don't lay eggs. What about platypuses and echidnas, duck-billed platypus? Because they lay eggs, don't they? But they're not birds and they're not fish.
Yes, they're just strange. We don't talk to them.
Did they evolve to do that independently? How did they get that skill?
I don't know. They're also very odd. They're one of the only poisonous mammally type things, even though we call them monotremes. They don't really fit neatly into anywhere.
Yeah, I often wonder what about snake eggs? It's a wholly different species that lays very similar eggs.
Well, yes, snakes, but snakes they also have instances where they have live young. So unlike birds where you only have egg laying, you do have some snakes who give birth to live young.
But this is proof that of which came first, the chicken or the egg. Because we know that dinosaurs laid eggs, so therefore the egg came before the chicken.
Wow, glad we got that sorted. So do birds serenade their eggs? You talked about birds practicing their singing, and you often think of them stereotypically in a tree with their nests and their eggs. Is there any reason why they might be doing that?
Yes. Well, in fact, there was an amazing study that's only recently been done that showed that zebra finches, when it's over 26 degrees, they have a particular song or a particular call which they make to their eggs. And now what scientists did is they took a group of these eggs. Half of them they played the song to, half of them they didn't. And then they looked and saw what happened when the birds started developing. And what they found was very strange, in that those that had been played the call would develop slower and would end up smaller at higher temperatures than those who hadn't been played the call. So the call from the mother caused changes to their physiological development after hatching, which is quite extraordinary.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's absolutely amazing.
Why is it good to do that?
Oh, well, they put it down to the smaller size being better adapted to hot environments. So it was easier for the chicks to regulate their heat. And also, interestingly, when these chicks grew up, they found that they were much more successful as smaller adults, producing more babies in higher temperatures than the ones who weren't.
Oh, absolutely fascinating. I know, Hugh, you're playing with the egg here, and I know you really want to pop it.
Great.
So do you want to do the honours and pop it? Let's get a photo of it and we can put it up on Facebook Live.
Well, I used to say the scissors that we've been using to make snowflakes.
I feel like you're a bit close to me still. They do smell really bad, actually.
Oh, yeah, well, okay. Are we ready?
Okay, are we ready? Okay. And pop. Oh! Actually, what's interesting is the membrane looks like saggy skin, doesn't it, around the thing? Hugh, I can't believe you're touching it. Why are you touching
so that membrane,
it?
actually, that membrane is just like it's like the skin of a grape, and that it's just as thin. Amazing, isn't it?
Yeah. Keep it away from me.
You're on The Naked Scientists with Greg Jackson and with me, Chris Smith.
Today it's our Christmas special, and with us is biochemist James Bowers, psychologist Amy Thomas, bird behaviour expert Eleanor Drinkwater, engineer Hugh Hunt and physicist Alan Covert.
So far we've actually covered 6 of the 12 days of Christmas, but now it's time for the 7th.
On the 7th day of Christmas my true love said to me, 7 swans are swimming, 6 geese are laying, 5 gold rings, 4 calling birds, 3 French hens, 2 turtle doves, and a partridge in a pear tree.
Now, even at this time of year, when it is absolutely freezing here in Cambridge, it's pretty common to see swans going swimming off down the River Cam. But there are also people who enjoy swimming outdoors at this time of year. So we sent producer Caroline Steele to the pool in Tooting, London, to break the ice, almost literally, and take a dip with cold water enthusiast Alex Harper.
You can imagine being in a spa and you go in the plunge pool, you get a rush from that. Well, this is exactly the same kind of rush. It's definitely getting cold, then getting warm in the sauna, and then getting cold again. Is a huge endorphin release, or certainly a high buzz.
Given that I don't think I've actually swum in about 6 months, what do you think will happen for me? How am I going to feel?
We'll walk in. Well, it's up to you. You can walk or jump. I suggest walking down the steps.
Jump.
And it'll feel cold. It's cold water. There's no getting away from. Your skin will cool down. Mildly painful.
Yeah.
But it is, honestly, it is mental. Mm-hmm. Physically, you'll be fine.
Yeah.
It's the mental anguish of feeling cold, feeling uncomfortable.
Okay, so before you hear my reaction, I just want to emphasise that the water was less than 4 degrees Celsius. Actually, it had frozen over just 3 days earlier. Okay, so excuses over. It's time to jump in.
Right, here we go. Okay. I mean, I'm as ready as I can possibly physically be.
Excellent.
So what is your plan to go in first? And then...
I'll go first. You go in, and we go. No hanging around, no interviews. You want to go. Okay, so just get in, go.
Off we go! Oh,
So obviously it was pretty cold. My skin cooled down straight away, and as my blood vessels constricted, I went really pale. But by the second length, my skin went numb and it became marginally bearable.
Excellent.
Oh.
How was it?
I mean, I feel like not completely with it. Oh. But I enjoyed it.
You did it, you finished it. Well done.
I enjoyed the second leg.
You could have done 2 more.
Oh my gosh. Oh.
I'm on a beach, it's boiling, it's so hot that I actually want to go in the sea. I need to put on more sun cream, I'm burning, it's boiling. Okay, so as much as I wanted to believe that, it didn't really help me warm up. So here's cold water enthusiast and doctor Martin Finbar.
Well, the dodgy thing is you get a warm glow. You often get a feeling of a warm glow after you've been in there, which is deceptive because that's actually going to mean that you lose quite a lot of heat. And so the thing to do is just the thing that you have to do with anyone that's a bit cold, that is, put layers on. People sometimes make the mistake when they are really quite cold of going into a hot shower and standing up. That doesn't warm your core quickly enough, but what it does do is it encourages your blood vessels on the side to dilate and your blood pressure can drop down. And so when people faint, they can faint from being cold and then having a hot shower. The best thing to do is to just sit quietly and put layers on.
Good advice. So, Eleanor, just very briefly, swans are swimming, seem to have no problem tolerating this very cold water. How do they do it?
They have an amazing system called the counter-current exchange system, in that their veins and arteries are very, very close together, those going down to the foot and those going away from the foot. So you have this amazing system where the warm blood from the body gets cooled by the blood going in the opposite direction. So when the blood gets to the foot, it's already really cold, so the bird doesn't lose that much heat.
Neat. So basically by pumping hot blood out of the body and passing it very close to cold blood coming back, the cold blood grabs all the heat from the hot blood, so by the time it gets to the foot it's so cold it's not got much heat to lose, so it stays as cold as the foot was without the bird actually losing any energy.
Yes, that's exactly right.
Oh, it's giving me the shivers just thinking about it. So I think we might all need a nice warm Christmassy drink to warm us up.
On the 8th day of Christmas my true love sent to me 8 maids a milking, 7 swans a swimming, 6 geese a laying, 5 golden rings, 4 calling birds, 3 French hens, 2 turtle doves, and a partridge in a pear tree.
So for our 8th day of Christmas, we've got some wonderful milky eggnog for all of us to try. So I'll pour some out for everyone to try. James, you're a bit of a... Oh, I can smell the... is it brandy? You're a bit of an expert. What is in eggnog?
So it's made up of, obviously, eggs, lots of eggs, milk or cream, and a fair amount of sugar, which is often mixed with some rum, bourbon, whiskey, or other alcoholic.
I can definitely smell it. I'm going to start passing these down. Hey, here you go, Hugh. Are you an eggnog fan? That sounds promising, James, and for you and Alan as well. Here you go, Chris. Do you
Is this
want one as
homemade,
well?
Graham? Did you make this?
Caroline's made it for us. Here you go, Chris.
fantastic.
One for you.
Thank you.
How many are we short? Who hasn't got one? Alan. Okay, you're in need of one. So it's a bit of a weird concoction then, right? So what's the story? Why does this exist?
Well, so apparently, back in the day, a long, long time ago, so even back to like the 1300s, things like milk and eggs were really kind of sought after because it was only really the rich upper classes that could afford to drink those things or eat them.
Alcohol as well.
And alcohol as well. And so there was this drink that was called posset, which kind of was, drunk by the upper classes, and then later
Doesn't
on...
that mean a baby vomiting?
Posset?
Yeah.
I actually was thinking possum, so it's what I was thinking in my head, completely different.
And eventually, in the 1700s, that kind of got developed into, where they would adding wine and beer to it. And they think the name Nog comes from, there's two different things. There's a beer from East Anglia at the time that was called Nog, or Noggin was also the name of a kind of a sort of like the cup that we would drink alcohol out with at the time. And I guess somewhere along the line, that ended up in America and stuck a little bit more over there than it does here, because America, they tend to drink a lot more eggnog over there at Christmas than I think we do in the UK, but they kind of held on to it more than we did.
What does everyone think? Should we be reintroducing it to our Christmas holidays?
It's lovely. I've never had it.
I've had it, and I quite like it.
Well, I've got plenty of extra egg here if anyone would like some.
Vinegar.
Yes, please. Well, I mean, speaking of raw eggs, I remember my granny always used to tell me, don't eat raw eggs, She'd never used to lick the bowl, which I was always really disappointed about. So is this sort of thing safe to drink?
Well, I mean, the danger with the egg, with raw egg, is salmonella.
Hang on,
really.
you're asking us this question after we've all just nicked a mug of it.
I haven't had any yet, so I'm feeling...
I did notice that.
Waiting. Bated breath, basically.
and so the danger with the salmonella in the raw egg was, it kind of, even up until the 80s and 90s and early 2000s, there was a lot of kind of... it was said that even, as much as 1% of all the eggs that we had that were tested could potentially contain salmonella, which might not sound like a lot, but that's 1 in 100 eggs, and that's still quite a lot and quite a high risk of salmonella. Although these days, so normally, it's so much safer to eat kind of pasteurized eggs because that kills off most of the bacteria that would be in there. But these days, the Food Safety Agency in the UK is saying that it's a lot safer now to be eating raw eggs, and the percentage, of the possibility of getting salmonella from a raw egg is much lower than it used to be even 10 years ago. So, although we do need to be careful, obviously, of salmonella and things like that. So, probably best not to
Chris,
eat too many.
with your other hat on, you're a microbiologist at Addenbrooke's Hospital. Do you find you get many cases of salmonella?
No, thankfully, the numbers are extremely low these days. Back in the 80s, when people were worried about salmonella in eggs, there were thousands of cases. But that's because, and the number has come right down because there is now a good vaccine which is administered to farmed chickens and it stops them having salmonella. There is another bug they can carry called Campylobacter, but that's something quite different. But the number of salmonella cases is now vanishingly rare, so we can actually assume that raw eggs are probably absolutely fine now. The risk is extremely low.
Where does this word salmonella come from? It sounds like it originally came from fish.
It does, doesn't it? And I don't know what the origin of it is. I know who Typhoid Mary was, though, and I wouldn't want to make friends with her.
Well, as you guys tuck in after that excellent bit of science, we'll move on to our next day of Christmas.
On the 9th day of Christmas, my true love sent to me 9 ladies dancing, 8 maids a milking, 7 swans a swimming, 6 geese a laying, 5 gold rings, 4 calling birds, 3 French hens, 2 turtle doves, and a partridge in a pear tree.
So, Amy, 9 ladies are dancing. You're our resident psychologist. There must be a huge sort of psychology of dance. It's used in so many different ways. Why do we dance?
Well, there's a few theories about this. One of the main ones is that dancing is a mate selection gesture. There's been studies done on looking at the relationship between the symmetricality of one's body and their ability to dance, and what they found is that people with symmetrical bodies are better dancers, quite substantially.
Why?
I think it's because the way you balance and you can move, you're more flexible and it looks more aesthetically pleasing when your body is symmetrical. If you've got if your hands are exactly the same size, if your legs are exactly the same size, it's going to look better.
Are you going to show me what I need to do better then in order to impress this Christmas?
Yes, so I've got a little experiment to do to show you how to improve your dance skills.
What have you got in mind?
I'm going to stand up and do one dance, which is a bad, unattractive dance.
Okay.
And then I'm going to do one dance, which is a attractive dance. And you're going to tell me which one's which, hopefully.
Now, I happen to know that Hugh Hunt is a very good human beatbox, so we're going to get him to do the musical accompaniment for you, Amy. So if you'd like to take to the dance floor, which is this patch of carpet behind my chair. So we're not going to know what order these dances are coming in. It could be the unattractive or the attractive one. So can we just cue the music, please, Hugh? If you could kick us off with a little bit of kind of a rhythm for it. A bit more invigorating than that. Good. Okay, Hugh's in tune. And Amy's taking to the dance floor. And, okay, we've got a bit of hip swaying action happening. The arms are outstretched, okay, like a sort of Jesus Christ posture with fingers kind of extended and a bit of palms out. So I'm seeing palms being presented to me. And she's looking straight out across the sort of surveying the vista. Okay, is that dance one? Okay, we need a different tune for dance two. Okay, so... Okay, this is a very vigorous dance. There's a lot of shoulder action happening here and sort of twisting of hips. Arms are sort of moving around. It's not symmetrical. Okay, thank you very much. Very hard for you at home to picture what Amy was doing in Dance 2, I think. It was quite hard for me to picture what Amy was doing in Dance 2. Alan, what was your observation?
Well, Amy was wearing a full-length chiffon lab coat, brilliantly decorated with 40,000 sequins sewn on by her mum.
This is a nod to the good old days of sexist British television. What did everyone think then? What did we think about the attractiveness of the two dances? Greer, what was your instinct telling you?
The first one was definitely more controlled, I would say, and the second one was a bit more sort of loose, wasn't it? And you were smiling much more in it, which makes it kind of more attractive to me because you're laughing, you're smiling.
So your money's on number 2.
I'm going to go for number 2.
Hugh?
Well, so arms higher up above the shoulders as opposed to arms lower down. So the second one had more arms up than arms down.
James, your thoughts?
Well,
the judging on that side of the
But I mean, it's weird because the first one was a lot more symmetrical, but it just felt a lot more robotic. And so, like, you know, there's something about... we would just say that symmetry is very kind of attractive, but at the same time, it didn't feel like I was enjoying it as much. Like, you know, it's not...
So, Amy, put us out of our misery. Of the two dances, which one was ostensibly the attractive dance, and what are the sort of go-to points for people to bear in mind on the dance floor this Christmas at the office party?
So I can safely say that you guys were correct. The second one was supposed to be the attractive dance, and I'm happy that worked. And it's interesting because they have actually pinpointed it to specific movements in the body. There was an experiment done a few years ago looking at particular movements of the body, and they rated the attractiveness of the dance. And these were variation around the central region of your body. So if you're moving, doing isolations with your rib cage, that kind of thing. Quicker foot pace as well. So you notice in the second one, I was speeding my feet up.
You did have to compete with the music a bit.
Yeah, I know. It was hard.
Did well under the circumstances.
Yeah,
right, so you've got to have movement around the rib cage. Move your limbs, feet quickly, hands.
Hands. What you want to do is get like variation in your dance moves. So as James said about the first one being a bit symmetrical, a bit boring, that's actually has been scientifically proven in that you have to have variation in your dancing, otherwise it's not attractive and it's boring.
It's The Naked Scientists with me, Greer Jackson, and Chris Smith. And today, the 12 Science Days of Christmas. Now that we've had some strenuous dancing, it's made me a tad nervous about 10 Laws of Leaping. How are your quads, Chris?
Well, they're not quite as good as your singing.
Best get down the gym then.
I reckon that's going to be my New Year's resolution, actually.
Let's get singing then.
On the 10th day of Christmas, my true love sent to me 10 lords a leaping, 9 ladies dancing, 8 maids a milking, 7 swans a swimming, 6 geese a laying, 5 gold rings, 4 calling birds, 3 French hens, 2 turtle doves, and a partridge in a pear tree.
So we're up to our 10th day of Christmas, and our Lords of Leaping are actually going to be bouncy balls today. Engineer Hugh Hunt is an expert on how things bounce and roll. It seems like an interesting profession choice, Hugh.
Well, I don't actually do much bouncing of balls, but I do lots of stuff with spinning things.
What are we going to be doing today?
Well, we're here in this studio.
We're getting down onto our hands and knees onto the floor. So this is in the dedication, in the name of science. There's a lot of dedication, okay.
And I've got various balls here, bouncy balls and snooker balls and billiard balls and footballs and ping pong balls. But what I want to do is to take one of these balls and roll it towards a wall. Just roll it along the floor, just as you might like a snooker ball might roll along the table, and then it's going to hit the wall. And you might think it might just bounce back ordinarily, but what it does is it leaps up into the air and then lands a little way away from the wall. It doesn't just roll back. Now you can do the experiment. I'm rolling the ball now, and you can hear it bounces twice. There's one bounce where it hits the wall, and another bounce where it hits the floor. You hear boom, boom. Here we go.
Yeah, it's pretty settled. They're very close together, aren't they?
More. Let's do it again. So you hear boom, boom.
Okay, and that's because it's rolling a little bit up the wall, banging the wall and then
so
bouncing
when the ball hits the wall, because the ball is rolling, for a very, very short time, it sticks to the wall and rolls up the wall and then becomes airborne, bounces back and then lands just a short way away from the wall. Now, this kind of rolling and spinning stuff, well, isn't all that important, except in the 2010 Football World Cup, there was a famous incident in the England-Germany game, Frank Lampard's disallowed goal. And I can hear lots of people listening to this show jumping out of their seats in indignation that the goal was not awarded.
But what happened, though? What happened I have to admit, I don't watch football. It's not my deal.
Well, the ball came in towards the goal, it hit the crossbar, and then it went down onto the grass across the goal line, but then it bounced back up again, hit the crossbar again, and came out. And because the ball just came out all of its own accord, the goal was not allowed. But it was the spinning of the ball that caused the ball to hit the ground and come back out again. So understanding how things spin and what happens about spinning things turned out to be pretty important in that game of football.
In your scientific opinion, should it have been allowed?
Well, yes, it should have been allowed. Well, I guess I would like to think that referees in football should know all about conservation of angular momentum and the laws of physics and would have been able to make that deduction for themselves on the field of play.
Other than football, though, where are you studying this and using this sort of spinning science?
Well, I think once you get outside of the Earth and you go into space, if you think of the Philae lander that landed on the comet last year and the New Horizons spacecraft that went out to Pluto, if you try and think about how do they turn themselves around so that the legs of the spacecraft are pointing in the right direction to land, or that the camera is pointing in the right direction, or the antenna is pointing in the right direction. And it's all about understanding the angular motion of spacecraft. And if you've ever watched these movies like Martian or Interstellar, and you can see what goes wrong when spacecraft are spinning out of control. And if you think of a balloon, you blow it up and then you let go of it and it randomly flies around the room. Well, that's because it's spinning out of control. So really important to get control of spin and understand spin in space.
And I have to say, I've just heard from Ed Wilson on Twitter @NakedScientist, who says the name of Salmonella, Hugh, is a bit boring. It actually comes from the US veterinary surgeon Daniel E. Salmon, 1850 to 1914, who isolated this type of bacterium in 1885. So there you go. Now, we finally come to the end almost, because we're up to 11 pipers piping and 12 drummers drumming. Physicist Alan Calvert is also a musician, and he's kindly agreed to accompany us on his tuba, which he's brought here into the studio. But before you actually play us out, Alan, how does the tuba actually work? How does an instrument like that make a sound?
You have to start off by making what's it's called a buzz. Basically, you blow a raspberry into a funnel. Or, depending on which level of brass instrument you're playing. And then that contains a whole lot of tones. And you select the resonant length of tubing by pressing the valves up and down.
Why do the valves actually change the notes, though? Why should the length of the tube affect what comes out?
What you're trying to do is to produce a standing wave within the tube. Now, the end of the tube being open means that there's got to be an antinode at the bell, and there's going to be a node where your lips are, because the air's not moving at that point.
What's an antinode?
Antinode is where the air is moving at its most rapid, and the node is where the air is not moving. And imagine the tube is stretched out. You have something about 15 feet of tubing. You can draw lots of sine waves within that
wiggly
15
waves
feet,
along it.
wiggly
Yeah.
waves along it. And provided they all start at 0 and end at maximum, then you can have waves of various different frequencies all fit in the tube.
Would it have to be all curled up like the tuba is, or could you get the same tune out of a long straight piece of pipe? It's just that we coil it up for convenience because it would be hard to move otherwise.
It's very difficult to march with a 15-foot drain pipe.
Yeah.
Also, it upsets the other guys in the orchestra.
Fair enough. And why are these instruments made of brass? Is there a reason why they go for brass, or could you make it out of anything?
In principle, you could. You can play a hose pipe if you've got a decent mouthpiece.
I've seen people do that with a funnel on the end,
Yeah,
and by swinging the hose pipe in a sort of almost like you're going to do a lasso, you get a range of different sounds out. Very interesting.
It's quite interesting. You get quite a harsh tone out of a hose pipe, very similar to a trombone, because it's the same diameter.
What are you saying
all the way
about
down.
trombonists? They won't be very happy to hear that.
Oh, trombonists are always happy because they always get to play the loud bits.
Fair enough.
It's because the trombone is essentially the same diameter all the way down the tube. That means you can get a whole lot of harmonics and overtones, and you get this good rasping sound if you really blow it hard.
But the reason for brass?
The reason for brass is it's an easy material to work. It's ductile, it's malleable, so you can beat the shape of the bell that you want. You can draw tubes of any size and length. You can solder it quite easily. It doesn't corrode. And most important of all, from my point of view, it's a biocide. There's so much copper in brass that bugs don't grow on it.
And that's quite important because you don't want to catch tuberculosis. No, but seriously, are you saying then that actually this is a useful aspect to the instrument because you're blowing all that moisture and warm air in there and a whole bunch of bugs from your mouth? Presumably these instruments do end up riddled with bacteria.
The first thing they tell you when you join a brass band is never breathe in.
I'll tell you. And what about the difference between the brass section and other parts of say, woodwind? Do they work? Is it pretty much the same physics, or is there a difference there?
Slightly different physics. The real difference is in the way that the first edge tone is generated. Instead of blowing raspberries, woodwind either use a reed or an edge like a whistle, which is the recorder and the flute have an edge, and everything else uses a reed. The question is really whether a saxophone is brass or reed.
What do you think?
I think it's interesting. It's almost entirely in a class by itself because of all the instruments. It's the one that sounds most like the human voice.
I can go along with that. Alan, we'll give you a couple of seconds to get yourself in position because Alan is going to play us out. And in the meantime, I have to say a very big thank you to our panel this week, who are Amy Thomas, James Bowers, Hugh Hunt and Eleanor Drinkwater. The producer, thank you, was Caroline Steele.
Now, we did ask you to vote for the best snowflake, and I'm very surprised and pleased to announce that I'm the winner. And have you seen my snowflake?
It's a fix.
Well, Caroline's told me. I didn't even cut it.
Honestly, Eleanor, describe Grea's snowflake.
I would describe it as round.
A piece of paper.
On one vote down to someone called Alan on Facebook. Thank you, Alan. I'm very proud to take my prize.
Next week, Greya will be asking, is there anybody out there? And are we alone in the universe? Effectively, we're pondering one of the fundamental questions of humanity, from flying saucers and UFOs to why we haven't found any evidence yet and what it would mean to find E.T. So we'll look forward to that. In the meantime, don't forget to head to nakedscientist.com/support to buy us an eggnog for this Christmas. The Naked Scientist comes to you from Cambridge University and is supported by the STFC, the EPSRC and Rolls-Royce. From me and from everyone here at The Naked Scientist, a very Merry Christmas.
Twelve drummers drumming, 11 pipers piping, 10 lords a leaping, 9 ladies dancing, 8 maids a milking, 7 swans a swimming, 6 geese a laying, 5 gold rings, 4 calling birds, 3 French hens, 2 turtle doves,